Red Bull and Max Verstappen secured yet another victory at the Australian Grand Prix. Not only Australia, the Austrian outfit has won all 3 races of the 2023 season, and they did it with pure dominance. Every team on the grid was surprised to see the RB19's pace, and they were clueless on what the Newey-led technical team did to sculpt such an incredible machine. But Perez's performance at Albert Park may have provided us with the answer for that question. Want to find out more about the RB19's design secret? Then stick around for the rest of the video. The Red Bull RB19 on average has a pace advantage of about 0.2 of a second on qualifying, and has about 0.7 of a second of pace advantage on race trim. Despite having such a pace advantage, Red Bull probably endured a tough race at Australia. Not only did Sergio Perez have a Q1 exit during qualifying, both drivers had multiple lockups during the entire Grand Prix weekend. After a premature qualifying session, Perez spoke to the media about his issues. "We had a technical issue from FP3, and we thought that we fixed it, but obviously we didn't," Perez told media in Melbourne. "It was really difficult to do anything out there. I became a passenger as soon as I touched the brake. The problem is something moving the brake balance forwards on the brakes. I just hope that we are able to fix it for tomorrow and minimize the damage and trust the team fully to overcome the problem. And we have a strong race pace. It shows the margin in qualifying and how close everyone is, and that if we can't put it together every Saturday and Sunday, the competition is really strong." Sergio Perez was left frustrated by unacceptable problems with his RB19, which prevented him from challenging for the Australian Grand Prix win. Perez managed to climb back up to P6 in the race and stay out of trouble during each of the stoppages, which became P5 at the end with Carlos Sainz's time penalty. This was effectively the same level of progress as Verstappen managed in Saudi Arabia when he drove to P2 after starting from P15 on the grid. Despite of that huge progress, Perez did find it difficult to ride the RB19, but he did not provide exact details about the problems he was facing with the car around Albert Park. Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko implied it being an issue within the engine's braking system and the power unit. "This is the first time in 2023 we have seen Red Bull struggle a bit. But watching the Australian Grand Prix, it seems though the team has been able to find a fix for whatever issue Perez has had, cause he was more confident on the brakes during the race than he was at qualifying." The Red Bull RB19 is obviously super fast, with the car commanding a bigger margin of superiority over the field when compared with last year's car. Many teams have converged towards more or less the Red Bull design, yet the Austrian team has put a distance on the field. The Aston Martin has a car similar to Red Bull more or less, with the only mechanical difference being the suspension geometry. Recent news has suggested that Aston Martin are not very happy with the performance they are able to extract with the Mercedes suspension parts. So the competition has been asking, is the suspension geometry where Red Bull are excelling? One answer for that question could potentially be the Adrian Newey designed suspension. An interesting magazine by Mark Hughes at Motorsports Magazine is also suggesting the same. Already in last year's RB18, the suspension geometry featured an extreme degree of anti-dive on the front. That's continued into this year, but in combination with an enhanced degree of anti-squat on the rear. Anti-dive and anti-squat are expressed in terms of percentage and refer to the front diving under braking and the rear squatting under acceleration. Most cars on the 2023 grid are running around 15 degrees of anti-dive, as measured between the 2 points of attachment to the chassis of the high-mounted forward top wishbone and the low-mounted rear top wishbone. The RB19 reportedly is running around 45 degrees, 30 degrees more than the rest of the grid. The new generation of cars created by the aero regulations introduced last year have a more rearward center of pressure when compared with the previous generation of cars. Red Bull are using the anti-dive and anti-squat to limit the center of pressure moving around too much when the car is being driven. This gives the RB19 advantages in terms of consistency of the car's balance when braking entry and in mid-corner phases. This feature also allows the team to run the car lower as well, which increases the downforces generated by the underfloor of the car. It also means that the car as a result will produce lots of sparks down the streets than others, which of course the Red Bull does, and we saw a lot of that at Jeddah. And because it generates more downforce by being close to the ground because they can get away with it, the DRS advantage becomes very powerful as the car is able to dump downforce for straight line speed with DRS. These symptoms are what we have seen on the Red Bull RB19, and it confirms on what the team is doing with the anti-dive and anti-squat measure on the car's suspension system. In Formula 1, every decision taken while designing a car is made with a compromise. Despite the suspension system providing Red Bull with such a big advantage, there are downsides to this configuration as well. A lot of anti-dive in the suspension geometry means that the front tires are not being loaded up as quickly as possible, which makes it very easy to lock the front brakes. And we saw it in Australia, where Perez had multiple front tire lockups. Even Verstappen had a lockup at the penultimate corner of the lap. This design feature also leads to tire warm-up issues, particularly the front tires. We did witness Verstappen struggling to get off the mark during standing starts. Also, it did take a good 2 to 3 laps for Verstappen to attack Russell and Hamilton on the opening part of the race at Albert Park. Also, the Red Bull did take some laps of running to bring the tires into the proper working window. All these problems, we have only seen them at Australia. At Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, the RB19 looked completely flawless. Well, Red Bull might have found a workaround to this problem and make such extreme angles of anti-dive and anti-squat feasible. The question is how they exactly achieve this, but it does seem to take a fair bit of setting up, and if they don't have much setup time, they seem to struggle a lot. If you take proper look at the 3 races we have watched, Red Bull had 3 uninterrupted practice sessions at Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. But at Australia, the second practice session was interrupted by light rain. It seems though Red Bull are able to work their magic if they have enough time to set the car up properly to deal with the problems the suspension system might provide. The RB19 at Australia did exhibit similar design traits as we discussed by having the said suspension system with a higher degree of anti-dive and anti-squat. This suspension system will prove to be faster during the course of a race session, but essentially be slow during single lap pace, and it is evident with the RB19 being slower during quali when compared with the car's race pace. The team is however able to deal with the downsides better than other cars, which is giving them the source of their real edge. This system does provide potential disadvantages in certain track conditions, just like at Australia. This could be a problem if the team has less time to set up the car, and this is where sprint weekends become a problem for Red Bull. Both the team and drivers have been very vocal about the sprint format and the changes made to the said format in 2023. Verstappen says he prefers the current classic Grand Prix format and could leave if there are too many revisions of the format. I'm happy with just the main race. I think that's way better for the excitement, he told Sport TV. I naturally, of course, hope that there won't be too many changes, otherwise I won't be around for too long. On the sprint weekends, the teams have only one practice session. This could be a big problem for Red Bull to sort its car down properly, and that may be why Verstappen is not happy about going to a sprint weekend. Fundamentally, the RB19 is a rapid car as a result of the suspension geometry. Another team potentially have the chance of trying to implement the same system without the downsides that Red Bull might personally be experiencing to a certain degree. Red Bull is expecting to bring upgrades to Baku, which is worth about 0.2 per lap. And Russell is ready to reassess his claim about Red Bull winning every Grand Prix this season, as he believes that Mercedes will be able to improve with its Imola package and make use of the Red Bull weaknesses during sprint weekends. But what do you guys think? Can Red Bull do something to its suspension to control its weakness a bit better? Does the competition have any chance against the RB19 rocket ship? Share your thoughts within the comments section down below. We'd love to discuss it with you. And on your way down, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get notified of our future uploads to keep yourselves up to date about the 2023 Formula 1 season.